So we've been spending some time with Ze'ev Orenstein. He is the City of David Foundation Director of International Affairs, and he's doing working with the archaeological dig in the City of David, and they are finding all kinds of evidence that proves the truth of the Bible. I want to get to the Ark of the Covenant, but what other things have you found of significance?
You know, for many people, the Bible's a book of faith. You believe or you don't believe.
Right.
Yet many people today, especially younger people, they say, well, are the people who march through the pages of the Bible, were they real people? Are the events recounted in the Bible real events?
Yeah.
And the discoveries being made allow a person not only to believe, but to know. And let's just throw out some big names. Until 1993, had you said, I'm going to visit the City of David, there's a whole group of scholars known as the Copenhagen School. They would say to you, David, you mean King David from the Bible? Well, yeah, obviously. Well, you know, they would say, historically speaking, there was no such person. What are you talking about?
1993?
1993, no such person. Well, what do you mean? There's no one mentioned, at least in the Hebrew Bible, more times than King David. He's number one. And they would say, look, you may believe that the Bible is the literal word of God, and we mean no disrespect, but the Bible is not a history book. It's not a scientific or academic text. Prove to us, not using the Bible, that there was a historic David some 3,000 years ago. And prior to 1993, you could not do that until an excavation in Israel's north, in a place called Tel Dan, right along Israel's northern border near Syria. They find a stone slab, an inscription dating to about 100 years after David would have lived. And it's attributed to a man named King Hazael of Aram. Aram is modern-day Syria. And this King Hazael, who's mentioned in 2 Kings, was in a good mood. Why? The inscription tells us that he had just won a major military victory. Over who? Over a king from the house of David. And there's a house of David. What does that mean?
There's a David.
There's a David. So today, virtually everyone agrees that there is, in fact, a historic David. And I remember one time I was with a group of academics, people who are not big on the Bible, and one of them interjects and says, well, you know, that just means, okay, there was some David, but he was like a small-time figure. He wasn't the regional power that the Bible makes him out to be. And I said, well, you know, it's interesting because, you know, that's the debate in archaeological circles today. And there's evidence this way that in fact shows that his kingdom was pretty big. But I said, tell me something. I said, 30 years ago, what was the debate surrounding David? It was whether or not he ever existed. Today, what are we debating? How big his kingdom was.
Right.
Every single day, we're finding more and more affirmation of Jerusalem's biblical heritage being true. I'll throw out two other names. If we're talking David, let's go to David's great-great-great-great-grandson, a man named Hezekiah, the biblical king Hezekiah, one of the most famous righteous kings of the Bible 2,700 years ago. And back probably, I think it was about 2015, archaeologists find a small clay seal with Hebrew writing. And there's a name on this seal. And in Hebrew, it says, Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah. The biblical King Hezekiah, direct descendant of King David. Next to that seal, the archaeologist finds another one. Small seal, 2 words. In ancient Hebrew, the first is a name, the second is a title. The name is Isaiah. The title is prophet. Wow. So you have one of the most Bible's famous prophets next to one of the most famous kings. Not simply a matter of faith, but a matter of fact. And we find ancient coins written in Hebrew script that would have been brought up to the temple to pay for the temple tax. We find inscriptions affirming biblical events like the Siloam inscription, when it talks about how the Assyrian Empire was trying to conquer Jerusalem 2,700 years ago, and how King Hezekiah, through his efforts, manages to help save the city with some help from God. And so it literally just goes on and on.
So where you are digging now, I talked to somebody that was doing a documentary, and they said there's 3 places the Ark of the Covenant could be. Mm-hmm. One is Ethiopia.
That's right.
I think the other one is in Saudi Arabia, and the other one is where you're digging. What is the thought on the Ark of the Covenant?
Here's what I could tell you that the Bible says. 2 Chronicles chapter 35. King Josiah is ruling in Jerusalem. And this is, you know, not that long after the Assyrian Empire nearly conquers Jerusalem. They're the ones who exile the kingdom of Israel, the 10 lost tribes. They're gone. They conquer almost the entirety of the kingdom of Judah during the time of King Hezekiah. Jerusalem almost falls. By the act of God, there's a miracle, and Jerusalem is spared. And Josiah comes along and he says, you know what? We can't have our future plan be based off of miracles. We almost lost the Ark of the Covenant. We need to make sure that never happens again. And so in 2 Chronicles 35, he calls upon the Levites to carry the ark, it says, one last time. And what's believed is that the ark was then put into hiding. And there are all sorts of passages and subterranean tunnels and caverns beneath the Temple Mount, some of them even in the city of David, where the Ark of the Covenant could have been secreted away to be, brought out at some point in the future. Do I personally think it's in Egypt or Saudi Arabia or Ethiopia? No, I actually think it's in Jerusalem. And I was asked once, I was giving a tour.
Boy, if it's under the temple, boy, that's trouble.
Well, I mean, it's trouble, and maybe
God will protect. God would. I saw the documentary. You saw that documentary where they opened it up and the people melted. Yeah. So it could be.
Yeah,
really
you don't want
bad.
to touch it. It's you see that in the Bible. Also, you don't want to touch it. But I was asked. I was with someone and his granddaughter, and the granddaughter, about 14 years old. She says, "Well, are you guys looking to find the Ark of the Covenant?" So I said, well, I'm only now speaking for myself and not for the archaeologists or anyone else. But I said, well, no. She says, why not? I said, well, what would you do if you found it? She says, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'll tell you what we wouldn't do. I said, the Ark of the Covenant's not going to go in the Museum of the Bible. It's not going to go in the British Museum. It's not going to go in the Israel Museum. You're not going to go and take selfies with the Ark of the Covenant. There's one place, and one place alone,
Temple,
where the Ark of the Covenant would go. I believe, if and when that place is ever ready for it, you'll find the Ark of the Covenant. But until that day comes, there's no need for it. It's not a gimmick. It's not a prop. It's not like a weapon of some kind. And so when the time is right, I believe it'll be found. But until that time, I don't believe we will ever find it. But that's just me. Wow.
What is are there consequences of finding it and using it, kind of like,
Sure.
Indiana Jones?
Well, we see two stories in the Bible where the ark in some way was disrespected. The first is when David is bringing the ark up to Jerusalem. He's made Jerusalem his capital, and now he wants to bring the ark to Jerusalem, and there's festivities and fanfare, and the wagon that the ark was on, it stumbles, and the ark, it looks as if it's about to fall, and there's a man named Uzzah who goes and tries to save the ark and grabs onto the ark, and he dies on the spot. That's a whole big question. What did he do wrong? Right? Which we'll save for a different time.
Yeah.
But then there is another story in the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel, where the Philistines are attacking Israel. And the people say, well, we have a secret weapon. And they go to Shiloh, to the tabernacle, and they take the ark out. And they go out to battle with the ark. And the Philistines, they see the ark and they panic. They're like, oh my God, we're finished. They just brought out their secret weapon.
Yeah.
But then nothing happened. And the Philistines, they said, okay, well, I guess it's not such a powerful weapon. And they go and they defeat Israel and they take the ark captive. And it wasn't that the ark wasn't powerful. It's just the ark is not a gimmick. And in fact, what the Philistines then do is they take the ark and they put it in their temples. And every temple that they put it in, at the feet of their God, came the morning, the God was toppled over. Time and time again, and then plagues broke out, and they realized, wait a second, we don't want this ark. We better send it back to the Jews, right. And they sent it back. And so, again, the ark is not a gimmick for us to use.
But have you thought of, digging and seeing something, and you realize this might be the room of the? What would you do?
Well, that happens almost all the time in the city of David. We're, 2005, we have our visitor center, and a woman comes in, Dr. Eilat Mazar, world-renowned archaeologist, and she says, well, beneath your feet, I believe, is the location of King David's palace. You need to move your offices. I'm like, what on earth are you talking about? People have been digging here for 150 years. No one's ever said that before. And she came up with her theory, and it was compelling, and we ended up moving our visitor center.
Wow.
And it turns out that she's quite likely correct, that we have now found in the city of David what was almost certainly, if not King David's palace, the palace of the royal Davidic dynasty, the original Capitol Hill, where the kings from the house of David would have ruled. And that was only a couple of years ago.
Wow.
So it's really amazing that 2/3 of the city of David has yet to be unearthed. But here's what I can tell you, even with the 1/3 that we have unearthed. There is no place in the world where you can take the Bible in one hand and you could take what is being unearthed on the other and show that the Bible And Jerusalem's biblical heritage is not simply a matter of faith, but a matter of fact. You could find the people that marched through the pages of the Bible. The events recounted in the Bible, matching up word for word, find for find, with the archaeological excavations in the city of David. And, we're living in a time, if you go back 100 years ago, the Bible was revered. 100 years later, the Bible is mocked and scorned, and believers are mocked and scorned. And I believe it's not a coincidence that at a time of unprecedented biblical denial, there's also unprecedented discovery affirming the Bible. And then it's a choice.
It's weird. We don't think that Babylon didn't exist.
That's right.
I mean, you go to the British Museum, they'll talk about Babylon, they'll talk about the Assyrians, they'll talk about everything. We know that happened. And I think there's more evidence, or at least as much, about all of this, and we deny it for some reason.
If you go to the British Museum, you have your Egypt wing and your Babylon wing and all these wings. There's no Israel wing, right? There's no wing that has all the archaeological affirmation of the Bible. And I think there's two reasons for it. One is the British are largely anti-Semitic. And second, and if I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, you know why they don't have a wing on the Bible? If you go to the Egypt wing, the Egypt of 4,000 years ago is not the Egypt of today. The pharaohs were not Muslims, right? The Egypt that we have today has almost no connection to ancient Egypt. And so you could put Egypt in a wing of the museum. You could put Babylon in the wing of a museum.
Those are dead.
That's right. The story of Israel, the significance of the Bible, and its impact on civilization cannot be put in the museum because you may have a starting date, but there is no end date. It's still relevant. It's still alive. It's still meaningful. When you go to the city of David and you walk along the pilgrimage road, you visit the Pool of Siloam, you walk where King David's palace once stood, it's not saying, well, okay, 3,000 years ago, there were these things that happened, and oh, that's cool. It's relevant.
Yeah.
It's still shaping the world today.
It's remarkable. Thank you so much, Ze'ev. I really, really appreciate it. cityofdavid.org. .il if you want to find out more at his website, cityofdavid.org.il. Ze'ev, thank you.